Chapter 3 begins on page 181. This is a chapter that focuses on character. Again, one of the topics that you have for your paper, the first one allows you to take some sort of element. You may want to do a character analysis. Choose a character for one of the assigned readings and analyze, explain what this character represents and how that meaning comes through. A chapter gives you some background on this one. The opening comments from your editor says that as readers of fiction, we care about what happens and how, mainly because it happens to someone. Without a someone, it's unlikely anything would happen at all. And that becomes part of what happens when we read a story. We typically get caught up in the characters. We pay very close attention. If you're watching a movie, you watch characters. With the action movies, frequently a complaint from critics will be that those action movies sacrifice character for simply the action. Let's blow everything up. Okay, it's like you don't get much from the characters, but you have all sorts of explanation. On page 182, you have a little checklist that they offer that says evidence to consider in analyzing a character, a checklist. So if you decide for your essay, you want to analyze a character. Let's say you want to analyze the character of Sardi Snopes in Barn Burning. Story we're about to look at. Or you want to analyze the character of Holga Joy from Good Country People. Or you want to analyze the character of the Misfit, or the grandmother from A Good Man's Hard to Find. Or you want to analyze the character of Jig in Hills Like White Elephants. Well, this is a checklist that your editor has provided for you to look at. One, consider the name. In Hills Like White Elephants, I made the comment, we never know the name of the man. He's just called the man or the American. We also only know the name of Jig. Clearly it's not a real name, it's just some sort of nickname. She's called the girl or Jig. Yet we know very specifically the name of the drink. And it's Sullivan. Character name can be important as we look at the idea about what it's supposed to represent or how it's used. Having him declared as the American creates a sense of the character. Comment, I believe, about that yesterday. They are in Spain, yet clearly the American, as he's called, is following his set of values, his views. He's not going to be inculcated into the culture, if you will, of Spain. He's not going to absorb that and join in with it. He's going to always say separated because he's the American. So you look at the name of a character and see how that may contribute. The character's physical appearance. Now, yesterday we talked about the birthmark. Georgiana's physical appearance is, of course, somewhat, not much. Focus is more on just the birthmark, what it looks like. You really don't have too much description of the rest of Georgiana's appearance. What we do know is that she's lovely. She's beautiful. Everybody compliments that. Unless you're a woman who's, of course, saying that that birthmark makes her horrendous to look at. But we know what women are like in that way, so again, stereotyping, sorry. Ladies, because none of you are like that. And the ladies are outnumbered today. Wow. Okay. The idea about objects and places associated with the character. Again, think about the story of an hour. If you're going to talk about Louise Millard, talk about the name, Mrs. Millard and Louise when she's alone. The idea about identity being clarified that way. The room she's in, what it's like. There's a comfortable, roomy armchair. She has an open window so she can look out and see the beauty of the world. Again, it tells us aspects about her character. She's always looking out at the world, not in and participating. The idea about the armchair, comfortable room, well, clearly she probably has spent time in that chair, which means that she has spent a very sedentary life. And so it tells us some aspects about her character when you look at the physical details. Their actions, what we see, their thoughts, their speech, we gain some of that also from different ones. If you're going to discuss the character of Jig, it's what she says. In Hills Like White Elephants, you have to see what she says because that's really all we have. If you're going to discuss the character of Emily Grierson in A Rose for Emily, story to look at, Well, there are several details. We get descriptions of her at different moments of her life. We see her attitude. We see what she says, what she doesn't say. We see how she responds to people when they ask her a question, such as when she goes to buy the poison. I have to know what it's for. She just basically stares at him, and he winds up putting 4 rats because she won't tell her. You can look at those aspects and see how those are worked along for you. You see what other characters think, what other characters comment about a particular character, if you have some of those. And then you have also the narrator's own comments. Sometimes you'll have these remarks where a character is described for you or expressed for you by what the narrator provides directly. So these are some areas that you want to look at. We have different kinds of characters, of course. Now, on your list of literary terms, you have some of these. You have round character, dynamic character, static character, flat character. And on page 183 and 184, you have a commentary about flat versus round, static versus dynamic. A one-dimensional character that behaves and speaks in a predictable, repetitive way is called a flat character. In Story of an Hour, essentially, Richards, or Richard, whichever way you want to pronounce it, is a fairly flat character. You don't know much about it. You have a little bit about him, not much. In A Good Man is Hard to Find, Hiram and Bobby Lee are almost stereotypes. The thug and the outlaw. So they don't have much. The mother in the family, she is a flat character. She doesn't even have a name. She's just the mother. That's basically all she does. She takes care of the baby. So that's what we call a flat character, one-dimensional, where you only have one, maybe 2 traits at best that define what the character's like. And they sometimes can be stereotypes, but not always will be. A round character, on the other hand, is going to be a character that is much more complex. We're going to understand them more as real people. They can be happy and sad. They can have problems. They can deal with issues. They're going to have psychological complexity to them. When you read or have read Barn Burning, Sardi is a round character because of all that he has to think and go through and deal with the emotions he has to confront constantly. So we see a roundness to his character. Then that leads us to what are called dynamic and static characters. Now, some definitions will say a round character is a dynamic character and a dynamic character is a round character. Well, typically if you're going to be dynamic, you probably are going to be round. Because a dynamic character is going to somehow change. Now, not every round character, though, is going to be dynamic. Because you're going to not see a change within that character. You're not going to see this movement in views and attitudes. Now, Louise Millard, we gain a little bit more. We see her. We start gaining her emotional complexity that she's going through. And we also gain a sense of change within her. So a dynamic character is one that changes, moves, develops throughout the course of the events, whereas a static character doesn't. Typically, a flat character is going to be a static character. They're not going to change. Occasionally, a round character can be, if they're offered early and they don't really change throughout the course of the story, they're still a round character, but they haven't changed it. I'll give you an example. If you've ever read Henry IV Part 1 by William Shakespeare, because I know all of you love your Shakespeare so much, you probably just want to rush off and read this one. The character of Falstaff is a very round character. You have all sorts of complexity about him. He's a liar, a thief, he does this, and he's just, a wonderfully rich character, but he doesn't change in that. He doesn't alter at all. There's no change in him, his personality and his. So he's a round character, a well-developed character, but he doesn't change, so he's not dynamic. And that becomes a key aspect. And Mays puts the little comment here at the bottom of the page. Not all round characters are dynamic. Not all dynamic characters are round. Typically, if you're going to be dynamic, you probably are going to be rounded somehow. Because if you've changed, then some sort of trait or quality is going to extend. It doesn't always prove that way. Sometimes you can have a flat character, because we said they're one-dimensional, 1 or 2 traits. So they could change slightly as you go through. She gives a little comment on page 184 to help you understand a little bit more about this. Dickens offers characters, many of whom are flat characters. They're one-dimensional, they're very stereotypic now. They're also very rarely not round characters. They're fairly static. They haven't altered from the start to the finish. She uses another example is South Park, Kenny. Kenny is a flat character. A little more it says than a hooded orange snowsuit with a habit of dying. Right? Dies in the next show. There he is again. Nobody, just take place.
Although they don't do that as much anymore. That used to be the big guy. Right?
Yeah, it used to be a big one. So again, that's the aspect. So flat characters quite often can be those stereotypes. And she mentions that also. The dumb blonde, the mad scientist, inept sidekick, all those situations. Those are what we call stock characters or stereotypes. And then you can have some characters that are much more archetypical, where they go into cultural patterns and they represent very deep qualities and meanings. There's some aspects to look at in those ways. Again, she goes into some other aspects. And in Barn Burning, the story I'm going to very briefly talk about. In Barn Burning, we have a focus on a character named Sardi, Colonel Sartorius Snow. And the family, of course, called him Sardi. The story is told from his perspective, but it's not from a first-person point of view. In point of view, you have different perspectives that can be offered. In writing literature, there are typically 4 points of view that are used. You have first person, where a character within the story tells the story to us. Cask Amontillado, a story you asked for last week. The narrator is Montresor. He's the character in the story as well, so he's telling us this story, what took place 50 years before, a half century earlier. So it is from a first person perspective, where I. Then you can have second person, but typically you do not use second person for writing literature. So we generally don't regard that one as one of the 4 major points of view for writing literature. There's only a couple of authors that have actually used the second person, the you, as a literary device. Rather, we have first person, where the character in the story tells the story, and then we have third person. There are 3 types of third person points of view. 3 different perspectives of narration. One is called third person objective. Hills Like White Elephants is third person objective. If the characters don't say it, if they don't do it, we don't know it. It's called third person objective because when you are, or it's also referred to as dramatic. Think about when you're watching a television show or you're watching a movie, you don't know what the characters on the screen think. You can infer from maybe a facial grimace or something, but you really don't know what's going through the minds of the characters. It's not until they say something or they do something can we recognize. That's the same situation in what we call third person objective or dramatic. In Hills Like White Elephants, unless they are saying something, we don't know. We don't know what's going through Chig's mind when she's making these comments.
We don't even know the tone she's saying.
No, you don't. And as I said, there's that one time where you probably can infer a sarcastic tone when she said, she knows people who've gone through the operation and they're so happy. Yeah, does she really mean they're all so happy? Probably not. Although the Americans already started, he's known a number of people, they're fine. Yeah, she's known too, and they're all so happy. And you gain this impression that maybe she didn't mean it that way. But there's no tonal quality in there. It's very objective. You just have to read and just go from there. Yes, sir.
Do people, would you say that authors, I don't know what the other 2 third person types are yet, so maybe you'll answer my question when you say that, but do you think that authors use third person objective or third person whatever because that style communicates attention better in their writing than other styles? Why would you choose one style over the other?
In the case of Hemingway, for instance, he uses that frequently because he wants to not allow any intruding emotion to come in from outside. he wants the reader to have the response. And that's how some people feel. They want let the reader engage it. Let the words on the page inform to the reader, rather than having something else do so. Now, that's not always the case. Again, objective is used quite often in what we now think of as plays or in movies, because that's how they're going to be told. The characters have to say these things, so that's what they deal with that. So we're very, very familiar with that. Many authors go that way because they're writing it as if it's a movie script. But the other two, one is called third person omniscient and one is called third person limited. With both of those, you have the author conveys what characters think. With the omniscient, we know what every character thinks. We know what each character feels, what each character is regarding. You okay? All right. The limited, we may only know what one or two characters think. In the case of barn burning, story that I mentioned here, you know what Sardi thinks, what he feels. You have his emotional reactions. You do not have other characters' reactions. You don't know what's going on in the mind of the mother unless she says something out loud. You don't know what Abner thinks until he says it. The brother doesn't say anything. So the only characters whose thought process, emotional reactions that we are aware of is the one Sardi. And some writers like to do that because it will, without having to use the first person narrative, that third person limited will allow a drawing in of the, you'll start siding with that character, you'll start feeling in touch with that character, you'll start really emotionally being attached to that character. Omniscient, you're going to know what every character thinks. In novels, frequently they'll use more of an omniscient, or because they'll want to be with this character for a while, and then they want you to move over to this character for a while. So if you don't know what each of the characters are thinking, then you're not going to know how to do that. Give you an idea though about of a third person limited that was used for novels. How many of you have ever read any of the Harry Potter books? Okay. You don't even know what Hermione thinks unless she says it out loud. You don't know what Ron says unless he says it out loud. The only character whose thoughts we know are Harry's. Go through the books, you'll look. The only ones you really know thoughts are. She'll describe actions when characters show up. She'll describe characters, what they say. So you get quite a bit of detail about those actions, and we can recognize them. But thought-wise, emotion-wise, the only one you really have is Harry. Because, of course, the name of every book is Harry Potter and that's when you're supposed to be emotionally attached to. You have some fairly omniscient comments that the author puts in that she seems to know, we'll go with she, the authorial voice seems to know quite a bit of detail. And is able to explain, offer some of these comments, like when the Dursleys and what the Dursleys are like in the opening of the first book. So clearly she has this wealth of knowledge that goes beyond just what can be observed. And that's where the omniscient aspect comes in. But she keeps it limited, really. Because you don't know what the Dursleys think until they say something. You get an impression then of how they feel. But to give you an example, until the last book, you don't know how his aunt feels about Philip. And the whole situation about the school, Lily being chosen, and she's not. Until she erupts in that moment about how it is. Well, you're not aware that for 6 books, that's never come out. Yeah. But that's part of what third person limited will do. It'll keep us with just a particular character, or maybe 2, because that could be a tighter control, but still allows certain intrusions, if you will, by the author into the mind of the character. If you're doing objective, you don't get to move into the mind of the character. We don't know what the American thinks when he takes and puts the bags down at the end of the platform. We don't know what Jig thinks that she's saying there. We don't know what's going through her mind when he comes back and says, "Are you all right?" She goes, "I feel fine." Well, what is she really? Is she really feeling fine? Or is she just saying the words? Well, we can probably infer that she's saying it, may not feel it.
It seems better suited for, third person objective seems better suited for short stories.
And it can be, because you don't want to do too much, but even then you'll use the different techniques at different times.
Right.
It's very difficult to write a novel from the third person objective, although it has been done. It can be done. Where again, that reads almost like a screenplay. If you're going to utilize quite a bit of detail of dialogue or description of the settings, and then you include, a character walked in, he looked around, moved over to the bar, then he said, well, you can write it that way. That will work fine. But I said it reads almost like a screenplay or a play. When you read a play, typically, you're going to be looking at third person objective perspective. Character's going to, you don't know what Hamlet thinks or feels until he says it, which is why in the Shakespeare plays you have a number of characters who suddenly have speeches, long speeches, right? Soliloquies, where a character alone on stage suddenly expresses his thoughts. When Hamlet is alone on stage for his very first time and talks about, oh, that this too thought resolves only to do, but the everlasting not fixes can against self-slaughter. Well, we've already got the impression the boy's depressed, except he's not really a boy. Because he's dressed in black and he seems to be not very happy where he is. We've gained that impression. But now he expresses out. And suddenly we realize this is a guy who's really thinking about suicide if he could, but God won't let him. That whole thing means. And we get his views about his father's death and his uncle. We suddenly have right there expressing that long soliloquy his views about his uncle, whom he calls a satyr, compared to his father, whom he says is Hyperion, sun god to a half man, half goat figure. And you get the animosity as toward his mother in that, where he talks about frailty, thy name is woman, because he thinks she's rushed off to marry his uncle so quickly, and that's just wrong. Well, unless he says all that, we don't have that. We don't know that for certain. And so that's that objective. So most plays will have that. Occasionally you'll have something, though, maybe a liner note that the author will put in there. But reading a play, it requires that objective read. Short stories or novels will quite often have the other aspect. They'll include something else. With barn burning, as I said, we get to know what Sardi feels, because Faulkner is trying to create that as the character we focus on. That's the character who's going to have the challenge, the difficulty, the situation he has to deal with. And without that aspect, you're not going to see the struggle within the character. Because Sardi has a struggle. His father has burned down a barn at the opening of the story. They're on trial there in the general store. Suddenly becomes not only a general store, but a makeshift courthouse. And he's going to be called, he'll be called to testify. And he knows his father expects him to lie. Because Sardi knows the truth. He knows his father did it. But his father's going to expect him to lie. Well, before he can be called to testify, the other man who just drops the charges and says, no, never mind it, and they just tell Snow's family to get out of town, basically. Which they're already planning on doing. The wagon was already loaded. They've already taken a job as a sharecropper at Major Despain's plantation. This is after the Civil War, so right after the Civil War. So they're already leaving. They just want to get rid of you, Snopes, and go. Basically what they're doing. Rid ourselves of you, just don't come back. Well, that evening, as they've camped, this is on page 191, you have descriptions that are offered for you. The wagon went on in the store with its quiet crowd and grimly watching men drop behind a curve in the road and hit it, and then we have right at the top of the page, forever, he thought. Maybe he's done satisfied now that he has stopped himself not to say it aloud even to himself. Seriously. Now, so we know what Sardi is thinking. The rest is just detail what you could observe. And then the mother asked, does it hurt? No, it don't hurt. Let me be. I'll wash tonight. Let me be, I tell you. Let's see. The wagon went on. He did not know where they were going. None of them ever did or ever asked, because it was always somewhere. And it goes on. Again, he had to stop himself. He, the father, always did. You have a comment. There was something about his wolf-like independence and courage when the advantage was at least neutral. which impressed strangers. That night they camped. The nights were still cool and they had a fire around it. Older, the boy might have remarked this and wondered why not a big one, because I always have a small fire. Why should not a man who had not only seen the waste and extravagance of war, but who had in his blood an inherent voracious prodigality with material not his own, have burned everything in sight? But he doesn't. And he goes on down and says, he might have divined the true reason that the element of fire spoke to some deep mainspring of his father's being, as the element of steel or powder spoke to other men. But he did not think this now. He had seen, again, that's the comment that's being offered there. How do we know what he's thinking, not thinking? Well, the author clearly can be in this particular character's mind. And that's the point of view of what we call third person limited. We know what he's thinking. We know what the mother's thinking when she asks, what's going through her head. She looks at her son who's been hit. The father's hit him. Well, she didn't think him. We don't know that because we don't go to her mind. And then later, after they've eaten, this is on the same page, his father called him, and once more he followed the stiff back, the stiff and ruthless limp up the slope and onto the starlit road, where turning you could see his father against the stars, but without face or depth, a shape black, flat, and bloodless, as though cut from tin in the iron folds of the frock coat, which had not been made for him. The voice harsh like tin and without heat like tin. And notice how parts are separated out here. It's the stiff back, the stiff, ruthless limb. We're using parts to represent the entire man. That's a technique called synecdoche. I think that's one of your literary terms, right? Synecdoche is where you use part for the whole for the part. So the stiff back, the stiff and ruthless limb are used to project the entire man, but it also creates for us a certain impression about that. And this is where we get to recharacterization into this. The details that Faulkner offers for us here then give us an insight into the type of person that Abner Snopes is. The stiff back, the stiff and ruthless limb. And a limp, of course, we see as a deformity, something that would be limiting. But this is a ruthless limp. And that changes our understanding. It gives us a different view about the character. And then when they turn to talk, this is what basically is said. Abner says to Sardi, "You're fixing to tell them. You have told him." He, means Sardi, didn't answer. His father struck him with the flat of his hand on the side of the head, hard but without heat, exactly as he had struck the two mules at the store, exactly as he would strike either of them with any stick in order to kill a horsefly, his voice still without heat or anger. You're going to be a man, you got to learn. You got to learn to stick to your own blood, or you ain't going to have any blood to stick to you. You think either of them, any man there this morning would? Don't you know all they wanted was a chance to get at me because they knew I had them beat? So I did that is offered without heat or anger. Well, Abner's reaction to people who harm him in some way, that treat him badly in some way, his reaction to do that, to them, is to use fire against them. He burns their barns. Yeah. You may not think that's as a major problem, but when you're running a farm, a plantation, now, for Texas, we're a little different. We don't keep barns that much for every animal or anything like that. We maybe use them for storage, and that's about all we do. But in smaller farms especially, the barn becomes a very focal point. It's not only where you store your equipment, where you store feed, it's where you store hay, but it's also where the animals go for shelter protection when the storms hit. You put your animals up in the barn. Again, Texas, we don't quite do that too often. We have big ranches. We have thousands of acres. They don't quite have that, but they have barns where when storms are going to hit, they put their animals in the barn for protection. Well, when the barn is gone, suddenly a central aspect of the farm has been destroyed, taken from it. So Abner knows that striking at the farm, burning down the barn. And he uses heat to do that, to express his anger, if you will, against these people for what they've done wrong. That's how he does it. But every other time in his life, he acts without heat and anger. So it's as if this is, an individual who doesn't have that. So where he builds a small fire, that very, very, controlled fire, nothing very elaborate. And I did that. There is something about this blaze And so you have this, and so again, the next comment shows us some of this point of view. Later, 20 years later, he, meaning Sardi, was to tell himself, if I had said they wanted only truth, justice, he would have hit me again. But now he said nothing. And so, this is where we get a sense of characterization on the part of what Abner is really like. We get a little bit about Sardi, but we also see that point of view coming in as well, where you have thoughts. How do we know 20 years later? Well, clearly the narrator, if you will, the narrative voice, authorial voice, is providing us details that are not part of the story. They're not revealed just within the story. So we go beyond just an objective. We go to something else. We go to an omniscient, knowing all, but it's very limited. It's limited only to what Sardi goes through and know and can feel. And so we call that limited or limited omniscient. That's one of the techniques that's used. As you go through the story, of course, you have Abner, where he doesn't change. He walks straight to Major Despain's house. He doesn't deviate. He won't alter. He steps, rather than trying to step around the manure pile that's on the drive, he steps through it. Yes, he steps in it, keeps going. He won't go around the back door where it would be more appropriate for him to go. He goes to the front door. He is very contemptuous of the servant who opens the door, because of course the man who opens the door is African American, and so he treats him contemptuously. Walks in, expects, says he's there to see Major Despain. He's not there. Mrs. Despain, well, as soon as he comes in, tells him her husband's not there and that he's to leave and come back later. So he turns and grinds his heel, covered with manure, onto this expensive rug, clearly expensive rug, showing his contempt not only for his position but also for the man who has hired him and the wealth that this man possesses, because Abner doesn't have it. So he's contemptuous of everyone and everything. He regards the servant to be lower than he is, but if he's a house servant, he's not lower. If he is, a sharecropper, he's really, not going to have much. He's not going to have nearly as nice of a life, if you will, as a house servant would. And the result is that we see Abner as a man who's very contemptuous by his actions. Nobody tells us what he's contemptuous of. We just can recognize that because of what he does, what he says, and how he reacts. As you go through the story, of course, Sardi has to make a decision. And it comes down to this moral choice. If I told him, he said, that they just wanted truth and justice, he would have hit me again. And at the end of the story, he has to make a decision. Does his father and his older brother are going off to burn down Major Despain's farm. And Sardi is supposed to be kept at home by the mother. But he gets away. He has to make a decision. Does he go and tell Major Despain? Does he tell that this overseer, this man who's representing everything his father has contempt for, does he go to that man and tell him, my father is going to do something wrong? He's going to burn your barn. Does he turn against his family? Remember what Abner told him. If you're not true to your blood, you ain't going to have any blood stand for you. You got to learn to stick to your own blood, or you ain't going to have any blood stick to you. But does he do what he feels is right? What is true? Do you tell the truth when you're in court, or do you lie because that's family? He did. Well, Sardi runs to Major Despain, and he just yells the word barn. That's basically all he says, barn. And then he runs off and goes off. And at the end of the story, he's run off up to a hill. It says at midnight he was sitting on the crest of a hill. He did not know it was midnight, did not know how far he'd come. There was no glare behind him now, and he sat down. He's back to what he called home for 4 days now. My father, he thought. He was brave, he cried aloud. He was in the war, he was in Colonel Sartor's cavalry. And then suddenly you have a little more intrusion. Not just what Sardi knows and things, We suddenly have something else, a little bit more information. Not knowing, this is what Faulkner writes, not knowing that his father had gone to that war, Civil War, a private in the fine old European sense, wearing no uniform, admitting the authority of and giving fidelity to no man or army or flag, going to war as Malbrook himself did, for booty. It meant nothing and less than nothing to him if it were enemy booty or his own. Well, Sardi doesn't know that. So suddenly we move beyond just a very limited omniscient to a much more fully omniscient. The narrator knows everything. He knows how Abner went to war. Now, he didn't go because he was committed to the cause of the Confederacy. He did just to profit. He was a profiteer. And he didn't care if he took the clothes, the watches, the money, whatever, anything of value, rings. He didn't care if he was taking it from the corpses of the Union soldiers or from corpses of Confederate soldiers. He just took it. All for profit, for booty, for treasure. That's all he was going for. So suddenly this man that Sardi sees at least some good quality, he sees him. He went to war. He was in war. He fought. Sardi is unaware of why and how his father had gone to war. But somebody is. The authorial voice only gives us information that's not part of the story previously. So Faulkner goes beyond just limited omniscience at that time to give us another trait that helps us understand a little bit more about Abner, the character. You gain another impression, a little more detail about Abner, a man who owes loyalty to no one, who admit nothing and less than nothing to him. If he took material goods from this fallen soldier or that fallen soldier, from an enemy or not, he didn't care, because he doesn't. And we gain that impression of a man who has no connection. And what is it though that he told Sardi? Got to stick to your own blood, or you ain't gonna have no blood stick to you. Well, isn't that part of what going to war? Right? They're called brothers in arms, right? It's supposed to be like a family unit where you're fighting together for what you hold and regard as important. So aren't they family? But Abner doesn't care about that. If the person next to him gets shot and falls down, he's just as likely to try to rob everything from that corpse as he is from another. Where's the sticking to the blood there that Abner says you have to do? So that gives a rise what that really means when Abner says it. It shows us a little bit more about his character. Giving comments at this time.